Welcome to the Legendarium Green Team. I'm your host, Kyptan, and with me today are Hurin,
Hi.
Lord Ash,
Hello, everybody.
and Stormrunner.
How's it going?
Today, we're going to be covering the first half of Two Like the Lightning, the first book in the Terra Ignota series by Dr. Ada Palmer. Two Like the Lightning was published in 2016 to immediate acclaim among not only the Worldcon crowd, but also the Balticon crowd, an event which is now on my radar. Set in 2454, the world of Terra Ignota has seen several centuries of global peace and prosperity under a system of government where people can choose their nation based on ideology, not geography. And that's about as much as I can say in the opening. If you need more, listen to our primer episode. But guys, what's your first impressions of this book?
I want to correct something. We're not reading the first half. We're reading the first 45%. And I know this because I'm reading on my phone that gives me an exact percent of how long we're through, which is the best way to read books, by the way.
Reading on your phone, too high a price.
We're reading from the start of the book through the end of chapter 16, to be more specific, dear listeners.
Who perhaps don't have the context for the joke Kieran is making about...
I'm not making any joke. It's just true.
Oh, yes, of course. Reading on your phone, the best way to read. Much better than some kind of like premium hardcover. This is why you bought the Subterranean Press versions of Malazan.
Because it's got illustrations and they're so pretty.
It's so they can look on the shelf and see him reading on his phone, knowing that they are inferior.
I have like a violent negative response to that.
Look, they're in the bags right now, and like I rarely take them out.
Oh, I can see the dust from here.
Horrifying.
Okay. So yes, first general impressions. I'm most interested in Ash and Stormrunner, as you are our two newbies to the series, Hurin and I having read it before.
I would like to say that I remember very little, though. But yes, I will not give my impressions.
I don't know what to think. I have highlighted more things than I think any other book I've read for the podcast so far. There's a lot of it's okay. It is interesting so far. I don't know if I have any feelings towards any of the characters beyond Mycroft. Like, I'm not even convinced he's real. It feels very ideas sci-fi to me, rather than character-driven sci-fi that has become popular recently. It feels very much in the tradition of Asimov, rather than.
Interesting. I disagree heartily, but I can see how you would get that.
Not as in like they would agree on things, but the style to me feels different. That's the same.
Oh, I could not disagree more if you were talking about the style.
Yeah.
Like, stylistically,
Really?
This is much closer to something like Gene Wolfe instead of like Asimov, whose style is like incredibly straightforward to the point of being like boring as hell.
Yeah, it's like very almost like dry.
Oh yeah. In that sense, sure, but
Sure, like it's ideas driven, Asimov, and
yeah.
I guess if you've only read the first 45% and we're only introduced to like one character at a time, then I can understand why you have that impression. But I just say keep reading.
Yeah, keep reading. You've barely met the characters. I would say this whole book serves basically as an introduction to the characters, and that's
what it's felt like so far. And now we'll have a scene introducing the next character from the Bash or the next important thought leader.
Bosh.
For those who are not aware, this book and Seven Surrenders, its sequel, were originally one book that was split up by request of the publisher.
Oh, so like the opposite of the end of the Book of the New Sun.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how often that was still happening, but...
Yeah, I mean, it would be a rather large book to be published as an author's debut novel.
It's a very dense book.
It's very dense.
It's a fairly dense book, though. The more I read it, the more it just flows by me. The more
It's
like 8 times.
It's pretty easy to read, I think. Like the 45% like just flew by for me at least.
I find myself relaxing into the lyrical style more and more.
I'm not relaxing. Mycroft just keeps putting in things to like, okay, I need to pay attention. I need to.
That's a good.
You don't like Mycroft's digressions?
Can
you call them digressions? They're pretty important most of the time.
Dare I say info dumps? I don't actually think that, but
dare I say tangent?
When it's a in-world narrator addressing the reader, I'm a lot more forgiving for those kind of things.
The way in which he's conveying the story, I think, is interesting. I think it was a very interesting choice to have exactly one chapter where the narrator is being straightforward and is like, okay, don't worry, this is not ever going to happen again.
I love that narrator too. He's like, okay, Mycroft told me to do this, and Mycroft told me to do this, and Mycroft told me to do this. Is that
Mycroft
enough?
didn't do this, but I have to do it anyways.
Did you like the chapter naming of that one specifically, and how much longer and more descriptive it is than the rest of the chapter names?
Which one was that?
Remind us again.
That's chapter 14, and there's no way to fully talk about this book without spoilers, but I will consider this chapter title only a minor spoiler. This chapter title is The Interlude of the Interview with Retired Black Sakura reporter Tsuneo Sugiyama, as related by Martin Guildbreaker.
Yep. Pretty straightforward.
The chapter before that is Ellipses, Perhaps the Stars, and the chapter after that is If They Catch Me.
Yeah, when the Perhaps the Stars chapter came up, I was thinking, wait, did one of the last chapters leave off with an ellipses?
It did.
It did.
Chapter
Okay.
12 is Neither Earth nor Atom, but Ellipses.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what I thought.
Yep.
Well, I was gonna say, so far, enjoying is a weird word to use to describe how I feel about the book. Just because a lot of it's dense. I have felt like I've been a lot of it just trying to figure out what's going on in the world and the plot. The plot is fairly straightforward. It's not the word, but like
No, it's not.
plot itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Just
So far,
kinda-
it's basically like, okay, this thing was stolen. Why is it stolen? I'm going to meet all these important people, and we're going to talk about it.
Well, that's one plot, but that has nothing to do with Carlisle.
No.
Carlisle is investigating Bridger.
You mean Jesus?
I don't. I really don't.
No,
Jesus is someone else.
who I had questions about of not if he's real, but like if particularly what he's doing is real and what is like going on. Because that's the outlier for me in terms of all the science stuff, quote unquote science stuff is, which I'm sure we'll get into Bridger later. But a lot of it, so far I've just felt like I've been trying to situate myself in the world. It's been interesting. Like it is kind of cool. I definitely found myself going back and like rereading not entire chapters, but at least trying to reference, oh, okay, this is the Emperor, and just trying to keep all the names straight, because it's a lot of names.
There's a lot of names, and they share names too.
Yes.
Yep.
So many Carlisles.
So many Mycrofts.
So many
Minecraft.
Masons.
So
a
many
lot of them have
Masons. I do feel for the readers that cannot hear the difference between all capital Mason, and non-capital Mason.
Mm-hmm. What do the
Yeah.
This
numbers
book was
mean?
meant to be read. Like,
Yes.
don't do this on audiobook, please. Like,
Do
you
it
can
on
look at
audiobook
one-
after, because
Yeah,
it's
sure.
also meant to be spoken aloud.
Yeah. But like everything that he does with the like extra textual stuff and like the changing of the different types of languages and the way that that's presented to the reader,
Like the punctuation.
Yep.
or like even the warning at the beginning of the book, like that stuff is just, I love it.
And I will say that all of the audiobooks abridge it in some way or another. Like, especially when we get to the tables of the 710 lists.
So they actually start
Oh.
speaking Japanese, is what you're saying?
I do recommend to new readers that they not stop at the end of this book and then move on to something else, but that instead they immediately go on to Seven Surrenders. There is very little recap that another author might do at the start of Seven Surrenders to explain where things are picking up. No, you're just expected to have remembered to like the lightning.
If you're listening to this, Palmer, I'd like to thank you for that.
Dr. Palmer.
It's Dr. Palmer. My apologies. She deserves it.
That means I'm not finishing House of Chains until next year.
You're the slowest reader ever, I swear.
Oh, to be fair, I have read because it's mostly because I've read a bunch of books in between all the
Like the chapters, right?
chapters or two, but
Oh, God.
I know
Like the way to ruin your reading experience.
I'll be better after this book. But anyways,
Can I give my second impressions?
Sure.
I'll give a quick history for our listeners. I read this book based on our very first Green Team episode, and Kip said, you should read it. I read everything there. This is by far, I thought, the best book that we talked about. That wasn't my own, at least. Actually, maybe including my own. But even so, I didn't appreciate it the way that I should have when I first read it. And this way through, it's like this is my kind of book through and through. And I've realized that. Just like her style, the language, the ideas, the way that it's being presented to the reader, it's just like my kind of book. And I want more people to read it.
The thing that I didn't appreciate on my first read throughs was and I still don't think I do because I'm not sure I'm capable of really appreciating it on a deep level, is the patterns of syllabic stress. There is a ton of iambic pentameter in this text, and deviations from it are almost always intentional and important.
So
Wow.
it's meant to be spoken.
Yeah.
And I don't know, do people, I'm sure there's some, but like generally when people are reading to themselves in their head, like, do you pick up on iambic pentameter?
It's said that English is the general flow of iambic pentameter. Just most spoken English falls into it by default.
Interesting.
Sometimes you read a book and you think, wow, this author is just so much smarter than me. I love those kind of books. And yeah, Dr. Palmer is definitely in that camp.
And like dactylic hexameter is easier to make happen in like Greek, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it like nearly impossible in English? Like you have to make it like
Yeah, real hard. Different languages have different patterns.
If you have like a strong habit of sub-vocalizing, then I guess it's probably easier to pick up on things like pentameter.
And I don't.
maybe I'll read it loud from now on.
Shall we move into spoiler section for the first half of this book?
Please.
Let's go. Full spoilers. Now, Ash, Storm, you're going to have to carry the weight of this. Who is the character who like immediately stuck in your mind? Was it Mycroft? Was it someone else? And if it was Mycroft, who was the second?
Has anyone stuck in my mind? I don't know. They feel so... Right now, they feel very defined by one or two character traits to me. They don't feel fleshed out at the moment. They feel not like archetypes, because I think Palmer is deliberately trying to make them not quite archetypal. But for the most part, like, these characters aren't sticking in my mind right now beyond their initial descriptions. I guess I have like a radical bias towards liking the Roman emperor, so I'll pick him.
Okay, Storm.
I'd say, I guess, kind of Mycroft, just because we get his point of view and a lot of him. Dominic Seneschal, the evil, he's the evil
The
sensei.
evil sensei. What?
Like,
Value judgments already.
Or okay, the antagonistic sensei. Sorry,
The-
go ahead, Ash.
Dominic feels like a character ripped straight from a bodice ripper and just like put like plopped into the story. It's like this I like I was like reading this like this is so over the top. Like, come on.
I love Dominic.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting to see what his place in the story. is going
Dominic's
to be.
Blacklaw, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the Hiveless, right?
Hiveless Blacklaw.
Probably him.
So super dangerous. Living on the like a real bad boy, this girl is.
Yeah, she's killed like 7 people, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, she's living outside the law. She's willing to, like spin a girl around as she enters her home. Push her up
Yeah.
against the wall.
Utilizing personal space. Yeah.
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 Dominic is a norm violator. That is one of the things that they are. You see them come into this house and immediately just upset everybody.
Yeah.
Go Blacklaw.
I'm largely expecting this book to be the hey, here's what the world is, and then for a lot of that to be appended or played with in the next 3. And kind of like Ash was saying with the characters, overall, I mostly define them as they are this. So like as I'm taking note or preparing for this episode. Cornell Mason, he's the Emperor. Kursala is the cousin chair. Felix Faust is the Gordium chair. Like basically by
Headmaster.
their position or headmaster. Sorry, yeah.
Yep.
By characters more defined by their position in the world, but mostly because I don't have. That's how I'm grounding myself and trying to able to understand the story better for now. But I expect that to change.
Later books do have a dramatis personae with 1 or 2 key details about a character.
Boo.
It's not always the detail you think is interesting about the character.
I
Huron and Ash just like the dramatis personae.
I actually don't really look at Tyrannus Personae very much. I do find it very funny that. So I was saying that a lot of the characters deliberately don't seem to be archetypal, but there's like a couple that like seem very deliberately to be that way. Like the head of Mitsubishi Endo.
Yep.
And his wife.
He feels like extremely like Japanese businessman from the 80s or something. And yeah, like the Roman emperor guy, he like Mason, he feels like what the Romans would idealize as an emperor. I find it hilarious how okay, so it seems that some of these characters have survived, and Mycroft notes that like Bayar, what's her name, the head of the humanists,
Briar.
Or
She's not the head of humanists. She's head of the cousins. She's cousin chair.
how the cousins. So it's just like we know that she survives, and also Mycroft is like, oh, and she's just lovely. You know, she's just the best person. She's what every politician should be. She just really likes helping people, guys. And it's like this feels like so fawning, very very conscious of the fact that oh, she's gonna need to approve these words that he's publishing. And I get the sense that some characters which are framed in a less flattering way perhaps have not survived the story.
Briar Kosala is importantly in charge of the servicer program, which controls Mycroft's parole.
Oh, she's so nice. She just wants to help people, guys.
So let's go to our first question from Ture. Is Mycroft Canner a reliable narrator?
No. Like he says so at the beginning of the story, and he also like he feels like he's deliberately undermining his own reputation a lot of the time because he's like, I mean, the intro starts like, okay, if you've heard my name, you're not gonna want to read this book. If you have heard my name, make me trust you.
Let me trust you for a few pages before I give you enough reason to hate me. Yeah.
Yeah, like and he's always talking about okay, he's going to lie to these people, or like his reflex is to lie, and obviously he's doing all these things with pronouns that like at the very least make things feel like he is infusing this story with incredible amounts of his own subjectivity and bias. And he also notes in a lot of sections, I wasn't here for this. I'm gonna say what they said because I of course I know what they would say in these circumstances, but like obviously he wasn't, like people aren't remembering perfectly, right?
I want to say one thing. You said that his first instinct to lie, but the dude tells everyone everything. Like his first
Yeah.
instinct is to share all the secrets all the time, unless it's Bridger.
Yeah.
I would say it seems like his first instinct is just be obsequious to everyone he comes across, you know.
Yeah.
But like in different ways, and he tries to make them feel like oh he's all on their special side personally. Like when he goes to Mitsubishi, he's like oh yes I'll tell you guys everything first. Everything's gonna go through you. We're gonna make this buttoned up tight for Mitsubishi, and then he goes to like everybody else who's like okay I'm working on your side right now, especially from all these other people.
Which is another way the reader needs to be wary because he's doing the same thing to us.
Yeah.
So here's the actual quote from the beginning. You who know the name of Mycroft Canner may now set this book aside. Those who do not, I beg you, let me make you trust me for a few dozen pages, since the tale will give you time enough to hate me in its own right.
Okay.
I can't imagine anyone reading this and like actually liking Mycroft as the narrator though, right?
I love Mycroft as the narrator. Are you kidding me? He's
Yeah.
such a literary narrator.
No, like I think he's an incredibly interesting narrator. I love reading him. I love the way he tells the stories. I love how unreliable he is, etc., etc. But like
As a person,
like he's the worst.
he's
sucks.
terrible. He's terrible.
Do we know what he did
Not yet.
No.
to? Okay.
You're gonna find out
all
soon though.
Okay.
What do you think he did?
It seems to imply that I'm betting he either stole something or he killed someone. It's like but like that, because those seem to like what counts as a crime in this world is relative to your hive and such. So like I'm betting it has to be something pretty universal that I would imagine most of any society would consider bad. So like murder would
Interesting. Okay.
or some major theft that has like a big implications or something.
How do we feel about the ethics of the servicer program as a whole?
Oh, wait, can we go back to Tura's question?
Oh, yeah. Is Mycroft Canner a reliable narrator? Sure, yeah.
It's a bad question because there's no such thing as a reliable narrator. Sorry, go on.
Okay.
On that note, the general narrator reliability thing. I feel like I've been, like I'd said, I've been trying to grasp the full breadth of what's going on in the world. So I've been not taking what he's saying at face value, but like kind of just trying to piece it together. Like certainly I've noted when he notes stuff, but trying to like mostly just understand what's going on, and like I'm not probably catching as many inconsistencies.
Like, what's up with all the witches?
What's up with Mycroft being like inferring the reader's reaction to what
Objections?
he's saying so much? It's like I don't have the negative bias associated with witches that you do, Mycroft. It's fine if you call Thisbe.
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 It's a thorn.
Like the Shakespeare character.
Sure. I don't mind if you call her a witch. That doesn't have the negative connotation. It's fine with me. I'm not, as you are, Mycroft. I'm not like overtaken by lust when you refer to someone with female pronouns.
Sure. Who believes Ash?
I mean,
nobody raised their hand, Ash.
I'm from around Boston. I'm required to say that I wouldn't burn a witch.
Regarding the unreliability, he also says at the beginning of the story, for this style to work, what really has to happen is I have to give you my credentials first. And I'm not going to do that, reader. And then deliberately later, we get reminded of this when Martin gives his credentials.
And reminds you that Mycroft didn't do his.
Yes. Like, again, this feels like Mycroft is being like, okay, don't trust me, reader. Or maybe Ada Palmer's being very heavy-handed about this, but Dr. Palmer is being heavy-handed about this. I don't know, it kind of feels deliberate. Maybe, like, as we know, this is a heavily editorialized story by a variety of people, because Martin has corrected the story previously with regards to the pronouns of someone, some emperor, like Agrippa, I think it was.
Yes, and has removed Empress and made it only Emperor.
So this isn't even the question, is Mycroft a reliable narrator? I mean, obviously he's not. But also, who has all messed with the story? Because it seems to be, I do not believe that it's just Martin that has directly changed words.
Well, we get that permissions page at the beginning. Do you think any or all of those groups could have edited the story until it passed their muster?
I'm sure that it maybe not all of them, right? Like, I don't think the nameless servicers would be able to change the words, like even if it requires approval. But I think that some people like have had access to the manuscript after Mycroft turned it in for publishing, and then made some corrections.
Yeah, that makes me wonder like what the purpose of like the in-world text is. So, which I know I'm sure will be a much later thing, but because I would think some sort of overarching body, like the censor's office, would be like the one that would have access, but clearly other people that are just in hives have access to this, like Martin. So it's
yeah. And sorry, I'm just keep going on this.
Okay, keep going.
The way that Mycroft is deliberately introducing characters in certain ways, it feels very much okay. He's trying to give us certain impressions of them based on what he thinks of them, and sometimes he deliberately refuses to introduce characters where it would be natural for them to appear in the story, and says, "I'm going to do this later because I don't want you to get the wrong impression about this character." So, like with the most prominent example being Cato, and he's mentioning a lot of characters for this.
I like Cato.
so okay. Anything else on the narrator? Because I've kind of a different question about.
I got something related. I love every time that people who know Mycroft's identity speak about Mycroft, and it makes me chuckle every time. Like, I think Cato is like, and I think we should trust Mycroft kind of when it comes to senseiers, or when he meets the gang rapists, and they're like, "I'm going to go Mycroft canner on your ass." Like, okay.
Also, it's called the Canner device, right?
By some people.
But he says several times to everybody who asks, nobody's asked him before, apparently, I didn't actually use it.
Yeah. He has his own special way of getting through security.
He calls it the Gyges device.
Yes, which is from the Republic, I believe.
Yeah, I think
That's
so.
what the Utopians actually refer to it, yeah?
No, they call it the trace shifter artifact.
He was just happy that they didn't go with the canner device.
Yes.
Okay, now that makes me think that his crime had something to do with like masking his identity and going around the system. And
notably, the context of the Gyges ring is that it's framed as part of a discussion. Okay, why would you ever be ethical if you could get away with being unethical, right? It's a question of what's the point of justice in the first place? Is it just for the weak to exploit the strong? And then Plato's trying to reconstruct an argument for why, even if you were untraceable in your bad acts, why you would still want to be just to those around you anyways.
Correct. And it collapses quite a few ethical systems.
That was the sound of all of our listeners leaving.
If they get bothered by philosophical digressions, they are reading the wrong series.
I was going to say, this is...
I picked up a book about Thomas Hobbes the other day, written by Skinner, so that'll be interesting.
Interesting.
Like Skinner from Skinner's Box?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Specifically about his rhetoric and how it changes.
Huh. That's an interesting topic.
Can we go on to the hives?
Yeah, let's go on to the hives. Follow-up question. The thing what you guys need to think about is a question from Sun Gamer, which is, which hive do you think Mycroft would be in if he wasn't a servicer? But let's talk about the hives in general. We've got the 7 hives, and we have the 3 laws, because you can't forget the laws. White law, gray law, black law. The hives are Mitsubishi, Utopia, Cousins, Masons, Gordian. God, I've already forgotten which ones I've said.
Humanists.
Humanists and
European.
European Union. Yeah, the boring ones. Okay.
Which one would Mycroft? I mean, it feels like he wants to be utopian, but I don't think he is.
He seems intrigued by them, for sure.
He seems to think that they're the only ones pursuing a goal worth pursuing out of all the hives.
I'm going to choose not to answer.
I'm sure we'll find out.
As far as like which hive he chooses to belong to, I don't know. Cousins, maybe?
That my Cousins is where I went initially, but that might just be colored by the fact that he's a servicer, so he's kind of like under their domain, so to speak, right now.
He's so like obsequiously subservient, though, that I want to put him as a Mason.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I would associate obsequiously subservient with Mitsubishi.
Mm.
I can see that. That reminds me when he meets a utopian, and they're like, "You should get more sleep instead of just having all these like pet charities that you do."
The micro charities.
No.
Yeah.
Because when he interacts with Ando, I think it's Ando, like he's very
Ando.
He's very, I get this visual that he's like practically bowing to him. Like when I think it's Ando.
I think he literally is bowing to him.
Yeah.
I think it's just him speaking Japanese, basically.
Yeah.
I think the difference there is that that's like corporate obsequiousness. It's
True.
not the idealized form that the Masons practice. It's a slightly different flavor. It's not obsequy for obsequy's sake. It's obsequy for this is how I move up in an organization.
So far from what we got of the Masons, I guess we just had like high-ranking members of the Masons so far. Like it seems hierarchical, but it doesn't feel obsequious to me. Maybe that'll change when we see more Masons, though.
Well, we know that they have a dictator.
Yes.
And anyone willing to put themselves under a dictator is a special kind of obsequious in my book.
Interesting. I mean, for the longest time, the philosophers were like, we need an enlightened despot so that the masses don't lead us astray, right?
Yep.
Including, a lot of Enlightenment philosophers.
Look, the Black Laws can't imagine something worse, could they?
I mean, when it comes to this world, since you can leave, I think you can leave a hive at any time, right? Or
you can,
stuck?
Yes.
Yeah. Since you can leave a hive at any time, like that radically changes what a dictator even can be in this
massively.
Right?
Massively. It is the major check on their control.
Mm-hmm.
That is true. I will say that joining the Masonic hive under the ability to leave if a bad dictator comes along is a good check. But that does require an informed populace.
Oh yeah, because the Masons are the ones that have your 2 years, your year or two of
your Anastia Lagorum.
Yeah,
that's very cool. By the way, I think I'm a Mason just for that.
I actually said that when I read that about you.
Yeah, there we go.
Called it.
Yeah, this is like okay, Martin. You're. I guess I like Martin the most because he seems principled or whatever.
Planning out his educational strategy so he can learn the most. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do this now because then I won't get to do it later.
Yeah. Would you join the Order of Perpetual Debate?
I mean, like
With Ashwood.
the year that sounds like a year of vacation for me. Just you wake up, you like talk philosophy for a few hours, then you just like do whatever. You're talking about that sounds awesome.
Okay.
Can we guess who would choose which hive?
Yeah, guess me.
Utopian.
There we go. It's on my phone.
Yeah.
I guess Masonic for Ash.
Yep.
I'm trying to think which one's the most sexist for Storm.
Mitsubishi? I don't know.
I was thinking Mitsubishi, but I don't know. It still doesn't fit.
Mm.
Well, there's no gender in this world, so it's
Yeah, totally no gender. Yeah.
Absolutely none.
They
Yeah.
don't speak of it, so therefore it doesn't exist.
Mycroft didn't spend like 2 pages describing Princess Danae.
Danae.
Her.
Her name only fits in the syllabic count if you pronounce it correctly, and it's Danae.
Oh, okay, Danae. Yeah, he didn't spend 2 or 3 paragraphs basically just describing the effect that her sex appeal and sexuality has on people.
Okay, I'm going to guess Utopia for Storm as well.
I don't know enough about the hives to have a reference for myself, but Utopian for Kip fits because they have spaceships. Or seem to have spaceships.
Correct. Easy call. Easy call.
Wait, no, do me.
Ooh, I want to say Black Law Hiveless.
It's probably my second choice, actually. Too much anarchy.
Oh, humanist?
Maybe humanist or Gordian, maybe. We don't know enough about the Gordians or humanist.
Mitsubishi.
Oh, gross, no.
No.
You don't like their
not.
color-changing clothing? Come on, I thought that would sell it for you.
I'd go Cousins.
Cousins.
Oh, boo.
I love the
Cousins are the lamest ones. That's my stance now.
They're so nice and they're helpful.
Uh-huh. I like how the first Carlisle's a cousin, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. I like how he's introduced. Like the one of the first things Mycroft says about him is he wraps himself in lies.
Yeah, I love that line. One of many lies in which Carlisle daily wrapped himself. Yep.
That makes me think that Mycroft he was either a cousin who feels like he got burned by them, or he was really not a cousin.
Like he definitely has very strong religious beliefs, which he's not allowed to directly express, but he's definitely trying to indirectly express to the reader. Yeah, he's saying, okay, many lies that he's wrapping himself in, many lies that perhaps he's exploring with others, and also at several points he comes and is like, come on, reader, like, do you really believe this just happened and not by providence?
This sweetest, this gentlest of cousins on our doorstep? No, that must be the hand of Providence.
Yeah.
So perfect for Bridger.
I want to say something really interesting. At least I think it's interesting. The first chapter of this book starts this takes place several hundred years in the future. You'd expect a sci-fi story, but it starts with just something that is absolutely fantastical.
Yep. A Boy and His God is the chapter title for that one. Number 2.
I am so bored with Bridger already.
Really? That's so interesting.
I'm not bored with what Bridger can do is interesting. Bridger himself, not interesting.
You didn't like the talk between Carlisle and Bridger, or like all of the ethics discussions that they go through about like whether they should resurrect people, or like how they should use Bridger's power, or like the way that Bridger thinks about these things. Like I find that fascinating.
That scene was very good. Particularly the should they resurrect the toys thing. That was really good.
So I feel like those conversations should basically be what like the reader should have with themselves anyways. Like that's what I was thinking. Like I don't think you need to like explicitly go over that kind of thing. I guess you can. I don't know. At least he's like a young.
I think that the reader should be having even more developed conversations about those things. Maybe not the 13-year-old's level of discussion. What Carlisle is giving is the 13-year-old version. I
appreciate Carlisle's role in this conversation. Like he's being quasi-Socratic. He's definitely leading Bridger to conclusions. I also appreciate like the digression.
Who here trusts Carlisle?
Trusts Carlisle? I don't know.
Yes.
I don't trust anybody.
I initially didn't trust him, but I kind of did as we get further on. I'm trusting him more.
I think that Carlisle is the kind of guy that, like, if he had been born in a different time or had a different upbringing, he would be like a hardline inquisitor. Like, he would be in the Spanish Inquisition, like, torturing confessions out of people.
Wow. Wow, that's not what I would have thought Carlisle would be
Not
doing.
quite
But
getting
okay.
that vibe, but
He's a
Okay.
cousin. Cousins are just nice, man.
Yeah.
As we all know, if someone is nice in one context, they're never not nice in any other context.
Not if they've made it their whole thing. Come on. Like a wife guy always loves his wife. That's his thing.
Of course, yeah.
As a wife guy,
Um,
yeah, I agree.
I find it really funny how a big deal is made about Carlisle's gag order. Something's terrible has happened, and he can never know his own lineage, and he is the first one we know the parent of. Or at least, like, immediately, like, the Mycroft exits the scene with Carlisle and goes straight to another scene, and he basically immediately starts talking. It was like, "Oh, so you're the mom, right? Don't worry, I didn't tell him."
it's funny.
I guess that either implies that Mycroft can, like, he has the kind of security clearance, or he's able to break through securities enough that he can get around gag orders in a trivial way.
I don't think he actually got around the gag order restriction. I think
He
it
just
was
knew
actually
already.
barred to him. He was just able to eliminate all the other possibilities, or at least enough of them, and like narrow it down to like, okay, this place will not open their records to me. It's in this location, serves this type of clientele. Carlisle looks very much like her. So
And I can intuit that something happened there.
Yeah.
Remind me
Yeah, I guess
who his,
effectively that's the same thing.
remind me who his mom is. I'm forgetting.
And Carlisle also probably has known Danae for a while and
Oh, that's
maybe knew her while she was pregnant and then wasn't anymore.
It feels like there's 30 people that exist in this world right now. And they all know each other. And
Chapter 3 is titled The Most Important People in the World and about how we're about to meet them all.
And then we get a list of all the most important people in the world.
Ash, what do you have to say about the great man theory of history?
the great man theory. Like, this is something that historians do not have they do not have a positive outlook on these days. I mean, like, it's gone through stages. Like, there was a point in time it's like, oh yes, it's just the great men doing the great men things. And then it went like hardline the other way. It's like humans can have no impact on history whatsoever. It's all just the historical forces working together. And now it seems to be like in a kind of middle ground where it's like, okay, great people can impact things. And Marx had actually good sayings like, men do make history, but not in the environment they're choosing or whatever.
Fitting for Marx.
I imagine Dr. Palmer believes this as well.
I would say that Dr. Palmer does not have a rosy view of the great man theory of history.
Yeah. On that context, it's funny to me that Mycroft is like, if I could have been born a slave anywhere, it would have been for Alexander.
Oh,
Dr. Palmer is also a classicist, so the surviving works are few.
So, yeah, yes, like the testimonies aren't great here. And yeah, like Alexander the Great, not all that great. He was a great military commander in some aspects, but very bad ruler for the most part. His empire fragmented immediately upon his death, and he did basically no actual ruling of it. But later in the story, this too is undermined, like by Mycroft himself, I guess, that he's saying, oh, we say Alexander conquered the world. He actually only conquered a quarter of it, and that fell apart immediately.
Yep.
So Mycroft is like contradicting himself here. He's saying
He
that
knows his history, but he's not immune to romance.
he's saying that if anything could be called great in the entire history of the world, it would be what Alexander the Great did, which is insane to me.
Yeah, what do you think that says about Mycroft's value structures? How willing is he to value something ephemeral?
He's got Greek biases, I guess.
Very humanist.
You think Mycroft has Greek biases? Let's actually go down and list the biases that we think Mycroft has.
cousins are liars.
He loves Apollo Mojave a lot.
He certainly seems to have complicated feelings about women.
He has a very guilty conscience.
Does not value his own health.
No.
He's very, very performative.
Which means that everything that we just said about him could be based on a performance.
We'd be able to find his true intentions somewhere hidden within all of his interactions with all the people that he knows, which is all the important people in the world.
He downplays his own agency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to have a high opinion of Mitsubishi. He seems to have a higher opinion of the Masons, at least so far. He said that the humanists have the best system of governance that has ever existed, or like the most stable.
Yep.
Which and you said before, Kip, that living under the Masonic system requires an informed population. I think that every one of these requires an informed population, except for maybe like Mitsubishi, who are just kind of tyrannical.
Well, we don't have anything about Utopia yet, so who knows?
I mean,
That-
Hiveless could be pretty
And
lazy.
Hiveless, yeah. They don't have governments per se. They just have Romanova and the Alliance.
You just have to take care of yourself, basically, which requires you to be informed about things. But I mean, like the Utopians, they're anarchists, right?
No, they are
No?
communists.
Communists.
Yep.
I mean, those
The
aren't
most
necessarily-
wealthy communists.
We've only met two of them, right? With Voltaire and Aldrin.
The Hive takes care of their needs. They just have to
Okay.
devote their work to the Hive.
Right, but they don't have strict they don't seem to have strict hierarchies in place.
An opaque style of government and management,
Hmm.
which we have not seen, so we can't discuss.
Gotcha.
They call it multiplex occlusion.
Cool
They
word.
love the big words, don't they?
Yeah.
I love you speak. I don't know about the rest of you, but I love you speak.
I haven't
Even
heard
the
enough
little
of it.
bit of it that we get. Well, you've heard micro charities.
That was a good term.
Yeah.
Although it's very funny because again, like this is undermining the idea that Mycroft is even a servicer, right? Like, because he's just supposed to be doing what people tell him to do. They seem to think that he has a lot of agency over what he actually does, and
But also-
I think they're right.
He's taking care of Bridger too.
No one told him to fix that sewer pipe.
Yeah, he just kind of like did it.
Yeah.
But like even when it comes to like actual jobs that people are giving him, like it feels a lot of the time that he's manipulated them into thinking that way, or into like steer the conversation in ways that resulted in them asking these things of him or thinking
Yeah.
that he can do these things for them.
Yeah, like the censor seems to Vivian, right? Seems to value him a lot, enough to bring him into like the top secret meeting about the 710 list, which means that he would have some pretty large amount of.
I think we're supposed to believe that he's one of the only people who can actually do the math required at the speed required.
Like the literal math or like the kind of socio-cultural math?
The literal math, the
Okay.
like spreadsheet math.
But don't we have people who are literally specialized for
like
spreadsheet
they
math
check
in the
into
set sets?
Matrix. Yeah.
Yeah, like Eureka.
Yeah.
Is Cato also? Who are the people that are like basically running?
Sidney
the,
Coons and Eureka Weeksbooth are the set sets.
Yeah, Cato's
Okay.
just a science teacher.
Wait. Oh, okay. So those. So and they're the people that are I framed it as jacking into the Matrix, where they basically like run the sky car grid.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, they are the ones who can see 10 billion points of light all at once.
Yeah. Okay.
And they seem to have warped their entire physiology around accomplishing this. Like they can't see, they can't hear. All of their senses are like tailored for like analyzing and like they're just IO streams basically.
That's something I don't like about the cousins.
I
Like,
think they
why-
can see and hear. They've just like adapted themselves not to most of the time.
I mean, like all
Oh,
of their
yeah, 'cause-
pain receptors have been tailored to not
Yes.
be painful.
Completely, yep.
Yeah,
That part was interesting.
or
when they were like, yeah,
allegedly.
Allegedly, yes.
They don't see the sun. It's not that great.
And then
So-
Eureka's
I agree.
like, "Yeah, I've seen the sun. It's just a bright spot in the sky. I don't see why I had to." And you know what? There's a good reason to not let babies see the sun. It really does degrade your eyesight.
You look at the sun, yeah.
Yeah. If you look even near the sun, it's extremely bright, and most human
Mhm.
vision is degraded significantly by exposure.
Okay.
On a different note, I do have a question. So, what was the bash called? Like, our main character bash.
The Sinir Weeksbooth Bash.
Okay, that's right. I thought. Okay,
That's what the
Alright.
original car is too.
are they okay? So, a couple things on that. Are they all humanist or
Yes, it is a humanist
that's what I-
bash.
Okay, so the bashes are all of everyone in a
bashes.
given bat. What? Sorry.
There are
Bosch.
mixed hive bashes,
Oh, all right.
but the Sinir Weeksbooth Bash is and always has been a humanist bash.
Okay, and they are literally in charge of making sure that the Skycar grid works.
Yes,
Like
they
them
invented it and
single-handedly.
have maintained it since.
Okay, wow. All right, that's interesting. That's a lot of power.
I'm
lot of
going to
power.
add that
You know what?
I find everyone in the Senior Weeksboro bash very boring
Weeks booth.
so far.
You find Sniper boring.
I don't care about Sniper.
You're wrong on every.
I don't
no,
care about Sniper.
You're absolutely
I
wrong.
find
You don't
like
find
my initial-
boring.
Kato's awesome. Sniper's awesome. Eureka's awesome.
No, I don't like Eureka so far.
don't
Eureka is
like
like
Eureka?
so defensive and just not the kind of person that I would like to spend any time with.
Are you kidding me?
Eureka is just like the first conversation that Eureka has with Carlisle. Carlisle's just asking questions, and Eureka's incredibly defensive the entire. Like, you hate all sets, huh? Why are you using these terms, man? Come on, just like I'm fine with that from a certain perspective. I guess it's probably deliberately set up.
Over a single conversation, they actually get like some middle ground, and they become like
Sure,
fairly
it's like a fine
close.
conversation in the end. It's just like
Yeah.
it starts out,
And
I
it ends
find,
in compliments.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I find Carlisle doing most of the work there.
Well, he's
Right.
a cousin. He's that's his job. He's supposed to be doing all the work.
Okay, but why would I respect Eureka for it then?
Because she's cool. She's like doing like
Okay. Okay.
flying car shit. And also she's
I'm
like a
open-
set. How cool is that?
I am very skeptical of sets.
Not universally okay.
I would say a lot of people seem to think that's almost inhuman.
That's actually what would keep me from the cousins. Sets are just too cool.
The such a thing's a cousin thing.
The nurturist faction is a cousin faction primarily.
They're all like, "Don't do this to babies,"
Oh,
and
yeah.
Yeah.
the people are like, "I want this done. This is cool. It is cool."
I mean,
The nurturers are the ones that are saying to not make this.
Our anti-set set.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They're all like, "Natural man."
Yeah.
Like they're like hippies.
there is a significant
Tracks.
gap between just like going all natural and making sets. Like sets are a kind of interference with normal human development that is basically unparalleled. Like you don't find it anywhere in our world, obviously. You find it very rarely in sci-fi either. Like this is like a total restructuring of how humans are. It feels like
This book is just an extreme of like everything that humans do.
in a lot of ways, yeah.
Like in Anne McCaffrey's Shell Person series, you see essentially what are sets.
Mhm.
They call them shell people. And they're humans whose early development was so wrong, medically speaking, that the only way for them to have a continued existence was to be kept inside life support machinery at all times.
In this case, it's just like some children are selected to be sets, or do they like opt into it, or how does that work?
You'll find out more about that. Does anyone mind some minor spoilers?
Go ahead.
I've forgotten.
You can send off your children into set training, and you can also sell your children into set training.
I'm not saying that sets are inherently wrong, but I am very skeptical of them in this world. And this is a case where I think it's largely an empirical question. So if Dr. Palmer is saying, okay, whatever, like the biologists have done all this work, and it's totally fine. There's actually they live happier lives, maybe in some cases. Yep. There's no developmental problems at all. I guess get on board with that. But
Eureka was born into the Weeks Booth Bash. Sidney Coons was bought.
That's so messed up.
Going back a little bit, the set stuff is all humanist, or that's not related to a particular bash or a hive.
I think it's any Bosch except for cousins. Yeah,
No, I don't think Utopians do it.
that's interesting.
And I don't think Gordians do it either.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. Gordians are weird.
I think it's primarily Mitsubishi, but yeah.
Well,
I find it strange that such a world in which they go to such extreme lengths not to like talk about religion and like steer away from gender as much as possible, and yet you could sell your children.
Do you think the religion, to what extent is the text not talking about religion, Dr. Palmer not being probably pretty anti-religion?
I don't think Dr. Palmer's anti-religion at all. I think this book is about religion.
I don't think
I guess I almost forgot we get Jesus, who I'm not very...
Yeah.
The Bridget, it's still, I don't know, it still feels to me like that's the one part of the book so far that just doesn't, there's something about it that doesn't fit.
this book is very much in dialogue with Enlightenment philosophy, right? Enlightenment philosophy was probably more than anything else influenced by the fact that at the time in Europe, people were killing each other over religion all the time, right? Like, obviously, Protestant Reformation, 30 Years of War, like whatever. Like these were cataclysmic conflicts, basically. Like huge sections of the population were being wiped out, and a lot of, especially liberalism, was designed to, okay, how do we arrive at some governance system where we are not just doing this anymore, because this can't happen anymore. Like, we can't just keep killing each other for this.
Yep.
And in this world, something happened. There was the church wars.
The church wars, they were brutal. They wiped out large parts of the map.
Yeah, so like we'll find out what those exactly were. But this whole system feels like a strong reaction against what happened there. And religion is, is the thing that caused that. So they were like, okay, let's just, we can't do this anymore. We can't talk about religion in public, basically.
Let's just ban it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, that context makes sense.
Let's ban religion. Let's ban gender.
Yeah.
Well,
They didn't ban religion. They just got the senseiers, which
let's ban organized religion and set a legion of therapists to create new ones.
yeah, basically.
They can merely ask very leading questions.
I think the idea of a senseier is incredibly interesting. I just, on a personal level, I'm very against this, like, no speaking about public religion thing for obvious reasons.
but I imagine within each hive you still can, right? So like
No.
So,
Any group larger
okay,
than 2 is forbidden unless you have a senseier present.
So with the Masons, if you're in your philosophical debate year, you're not allowed to talk about religion during that.
You are not.
year? Okay.
No.
That's interesting. I don't see how that would quite work, but go ahead.
Yeah. And even in a group of 2, you're not allowed to proselytize.
Yeah.
Which is why when Jed or Tycoon comes into the Bosch and he's just like, "Oh, we could take care of your religious things," that he calls out everybody's religion, and they're like, "What? Who is this guy?
You can't. You mustn't." He's like, "No, but I can.
I just did it."
I'm Jed Mason.
Oh, you mean I shouldn't? Yeah, I get that. Maybe I shouldn't. It is the first law.
I understand. I'll do my best to make your words as truthful as possible.
I guess I like Jed Mason.
Yeah, I say he's interesting just in that he's the character that it's like everybody is talking about him the entire first half of the book. Like he gets brought up by almost everybody. Then like we finally meet him, which is it was interesting to see how much his Dr. Palmer seemed to want to create this mystery and aura around him and his reputation prior to us meeting him.
He seems kind of autistic to me.
Just a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah.
He seems what?
Autistic.
Oh.
Yep, he's yep. Can I make a complaint?
Certainly neurodivergent. Sure.
Bosch, it's a stupid name, and it doesn't mean anything special in Japanese.
Doesn't mean like home, but stronger.
No, it just means nice place. That's it. It just means good place.
Do you think that Dr. Palmer is saying that maybe the etymology of the word Bosch is just from a weeb and no one in the world wants to acknowledge it?
Like those kind of things like drive me crazy. They're like, oh, there's this Japanese word, and it means this thing in this very special context. And like the One Piece fans, they go on about like the word nakama. It just means comrade or like companion. That's it.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to like I don't know, mythologize some like common word. It drives me crazy.
But it's from One Piece, and so like then so it's
Ohana means family.
like is it? Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So just
wait,
say family. We got our own word. It means family.
Kieran, are you saying that we should be prescriptive about how people use language?
No, absolutely not. I'm not saying that in the least.
Okay, so Bosch is fine then. It's taken on this new meaning in this world.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, but if they're going back in time and looking back at like what it actually means now, it has no basis.
Who says it has some basis?
That's like 500 years in the past. Come on, who remembers that?
Clearly, Dr. Palmer is smarter than I am, and I would like to ask her about like this future etymology because I don't see it.
She points out like the etymology in this world is nonsense anyways, right? Like there's this one word, I don't remember what it was, Reader, do you know that the etymology of this word can be from this or from this, and nobody knows? And it's
I
kind
think
of stupid to even
Sensair.
ask the question.
It was
Yeah,
sensei, yeah,
sensei.
because it could be
Yeah.
like sensei or that was really
Zen
interesting though.
or whatever.
But that's just Mycroft making things up.
Yeah.
That's just him thinking randomly, like, hey, it could be this, it could be this. Who knows? Not me.
Nobody seems to.
It's almost like language is kind of this hard thing to grasp. That words change meaning.
Yeah. So we did briefly talk about the theoretical plot of this book, the 710 list. And we have a question from Sun Gamer. Do you think we've been introduced to the person who stole the 710 list yet? Theorizing is always appreciated too.
We would 100% have met them, I'm sure.
Ash?
I almost don't want to answer this question because it would imply that I care at all. I don't know. I haven't thought about it really. It's just like this is the vehicle by which we are introduced to the world and the characters, and it's the inciting incident. But like as far as like the inciting incident goes, it's not a very interesting one. And just like who did it, it feels like it's not the point.
It's a MacGuffin.
Kind of.
The actual 710 list, it seems like a mixture between a popularity contest that's also kind of predicting both the political and economic fortunes of the world, or how different people, publications, or politicians think different people have on the world at the same time or at a given time.
And by guessing the influence and actually create that influence. Yeah.
Imagine if like world leaders cared about the Times top 100 list versus like the BBC top 100 list versus like the Sun's top
The
100
Forbes
list.
40 under 40.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is like from a publication that's like is emphasized many times. This is not even an important publication, really. It's like kind of important to Mitsubishi, I guess. But
It's like archaic and niche, and like some of the Mitsubishi like it because it's historical.
to me, it feels just like an emphasis that this system is not stable, and like even this tiny disruption, this list being published 2 days earlier, has enough ramifications that the whole thing could just collapse.
Well, it does seem like Martin's primary investigation or like primary motive assumption is that it's a for-profit crime and that like someone could get a heads up on the betting market if this was leaked.
Yeah, and then we get the doomsday predictions, like, oh, once these numbers reach this kind of tipping point, then there's going to be like a slow slide into civil war, I guess.
Collapse at least.
It does show like a surprisingly reactive populace if so many people are willing to reconsider their hive allegiances based on just some editorials.
An editorial published 2 days earlier,
Yep.
right, than it was supposed to be.
Should we understand the structure of the 710 list in terms of like what the significance of the 3 names at the bottom is in comparison to like the 7 on top?
The 7 on top are the hive leaders generally.
Yeah, that like seemed to be a trend. Good.
It was just saying, okay, well, we basically know everyone who's going to be on the 7 list and their order, because everyone's going to be biased in certain ways. I mean, sometimes they'll list things one notch higher or one notch lower, and then the only really important thing is who the 3 at the bottom are, because those are the wild cards. This would feel very inconsequential to me. It's interesting that this is consequential.
Okay, I agree. I agree that these 710 lists seem incredibly vapid to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was my like. I was trying to grasp why they would care about it, but they all do. So that I did just accept that since they all seem to care so much. I'm like, okay, I don't get why this is totally that significant yet, but everyone seems to think it is. So
Yeah, well, that makes it significant by itself.
yeah.
Of course. But
Maybe like when the 710 lists are published, a lot of people who just try and go with the flow of like, hey, what hive is strongest, switch allegiances.
and they all pick correctly the Masonic Guild.
Maybe these like ideological nations aren't actually ideological, they're just convenient.
I would join out of convenience.
I have a sort of a prediction. It's related, but the landscape of the hives will look very different by the end of this series and possibly by the end of this book. Because there was already a reference to how 2 of the older hives had combined to become the humanists, right?
Yeah, there's been a bunch of hive mergers, and Mitsubishi is technically Mitsubishi Greenpeace.
Okay, interesting.
which is absolutely hilarious. But they also have different names themselves based on the nation strats, right? Like
Yeah.
the Chinese call it something different, and the Koreans call themselves something different.
Yes.
Which
Like
they-
Sanling.
Yeah.
Sanling
And
is
these-
just a different way to read Mitsubishi.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Still a different word, which is important.
Well, it's like they take the Mitsubishi kanji and they read it in the Chinese way.
That's all very interesting. If the whole world is supposed to be nation states aren't really the governing thing, but like if a lot of the Mitsubishi,
But nation strats still exist.
yeah, seems to say Asia, then like Europe is literally Europe.
Yeah.
And Greece
There's
is still
a king
Greece.
of Spain.
Yeah.
Yeah, Greece is still Greece. And like the Mitsubishi internal politics is dominated by questions of which nation strat gets dominance, right? It's like it's either Chinese or the Japanese or the Koreans that take precedence, and it's probably the Chinese or the Japanese.
And yet Tolgenkyo is in Indonesia, right?
Oh yeah, because it needs to be like a middle ground.
Because none of them could agree. And yet, India is almost never mentioned as leading. I don't think they ever have.
So,
Yeah. Are they part of?
Yeah, they are. They are strongly the Greenpeace faction.
Mhm.
I think the only Indian director is the Greenpeace director.
Well, what's her face? The leader of the Cousins is Indian, isn't she?
Ethnically, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting when Mycroft said, okay, others may call it a mistake, but I call it the wisest move Carlyle ever made, for if Guardian's growth had not been checked, by now its matchless popularity would have doomed us to that dread death knell of peace. Majority.
And interestingly, Gordian was like it wasn't really an ideological hive. It was just like the first hive.
And it was like a corporation, wasn't it?
It was a corporation. Yeah. And then it got hijacked by the Brillist Institute.
Brillists are weird.
Adolf Richter Brill. And then people were like, wait, I didn't sign up to be part of a psychology cult.
Wait, why is Adolf a name now?
Dr. Ada Palmer has been asked this question, and apparently Adolf is still a name in Germany.
Oh, yeah.
Even now?
Yeah, even now.
Wow.
I mean, like, are you going to stop calling people Tom?
Based on
I don't know. Oh, yeah, okay, let's Joseph. Are you going to stop calling people Joseph? No, you're not going to stop calling people Joseph because Stalin existed,
oh
right?
yeah.
One thing I want to note, just before I forget. So, Mycroft is super weird for giving people gendered pronouns, right? Jed Mason comes in. He says, "Will this answer suffice? If you prefer one with some formal ordination, my dominant can serve, if he is found."
Yup.
It's so funny because Jed, he's like, "Oh, I don't play by the rules. I'm a rogue agent, basically," because he's like, "I only serve truth or whatever." And then everybody respects him more than anybody else in the world. It feels like.
Well, everybody who was at the Scenario Weeks booth bash, for sure.
Yeah. But like it's always like, what's Jed Mason? To me, it feels deliberate to keep the ended with a chapter that Jed Mason was introduced in, because like
It was.
before this happened, like Mycroft was mentioning Jed Mason like 3 times a chapter. It felt like it was always like, when's Jed going to be wrong to this? Where's Jed? How has he been told?
I mean, you saw the chapter title for that chapter where Jed Mason appears, right? Thou canst not put it off forever, Mycroft.
Yeah, like clearly this guy's going to warp the whole story around him. Like he comes in and immediately thinks they're starting to change.
which groups pronounce his name Jed?
Jedd Mason.
Oh yeah. There was a specific like group that where like where
Mitsubishi calls him
Jed.
Tycoon. And then there's another one that has a special name for him. And then one of them calls him Jed. And then the other one calls him Jedd.
I think the humanists are more likely to say Jed.
I thought it was the humanists. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone having their own name for him is super telling too.
I wonder what Mycroft names him in private.
Darling.
Darling.
Yeah. Clearly Mycroft has strong feelings about Jed.
We do have another question, which I think ties in right now, from Sungamer. At this point, what point do you think Palmer is making with the pronoun shenanigans, asking for a friend?
I don't think Palmer is making a specific point. I think Palmer is mostly asking questions and creating ambiguity for readers to figure things out. I think Palmer wants people to feel unmoored from the concept of gender generally, but clearly it still exists in this world. Like it's not this kind of future where everyone has just abandoned the concept. It seems to be an undercurrent running through a lot of what goes on, even if it's not explicitly stated.
I agree.
I think that Palmer wants you questioning the gender of everyone in this text.
Sure.
I think that makes. I agree. I think Palmer just wants the reader to be thinking about gender critically in general. I don't think it actually matters for the most part even if the characters in this world do most of the characters even think in gender, so they don't have gender in the first place. So like when you say,
I mean, Mycroft does.
yeah, but Minecraft's a weirdo.
I don't think that Mycroft is special here.
When you say that you think that Dr. Palmer wants us to consider the gender, what do we consider their genitals? Do we actually consider their how they actually consider their gender to be, or if it's a third gender or something in between? I don't think any of that actually matters. I just think that she wants the reader to consider gender critically and to think about how it affects us now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it also is affecting people in the future. I think the most telling part is with regards to Sniper, which like everyone is wondering, okay, what sex is Sniper actually? Like what kind of genitals does Sniper have?
But if you know, that would ruin all the sex dolls.
It would ruin half the sex dolls.
Do you know it would be half?
Or maybe all of them.
Oh yeah, we don't know. That's true. And like, what happened with all those the child dolls thing feels super
So weird.
sketchy to me.
Sniper is one of the most disturbing parts of this book series. I will say that, especially
Yeah.
child Sniper.
Yeah.
I love an introduction to Sniper, though.
Who is buying lifelike child dolls that are
you.
anatomically accurate?
People are
Mhm.
buying those now. Usually people who lost a child in childbirth or at a young age or through a miscarriage or something, they have like incredibly creepy looking, and like they actually help people apparently.
Hmm.
Sometimes, of course, people take it way too far and like it gets really, really unhealthy, but like it does those kind of weird, creepy ass dolls. They look real. Like I've seen some of them. They look like real babies, and you punch them, and then they don't react like real babies. But yeah, people
That's
buy
how you
stuff.
test.
Oh yeah, of course. That's not a real baby.
It's not real, baby. I mean, like Minecraft when Danae, what's that?
Danae.
Danae, when she's on screen, then he's like. So the reason that this works is because we watched old movies and we have been powerfully affected by these old movies, and I'm just left thinking is like, okay, this feels like a post hoc rationalization for why Danae's wiles are so effective on people. Because I don't think that just watching some old movies can lead you to have this strong an effect, right? Like that seems entirely like, as the kids would say, cope to me.
Yeah.
Um,
You were almost harsh with your slang, almost.
Yeah.
I find it-
Danae was definitely the part of the gender stuff I think I mentioned before, where it's she.
I think
He
we're
called-
also supposed to believe that she is just beautiful.
Yeah, like that.
And
Yeah.
the lack
That's
of
true.
resistance to beautiful women is something that might not entirely be sociological. It might just be inbuilt.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
he calls her a monster. He almost calls her a witch, I think. Because she's just kind of like, she's not even doing anything that crazy, right? Like she's just acting feminine.
Dare I say, inhumanly beautiful.
I got
Yeah,
a problem with Deny It. If her shtick works so well, why aren't more people doing it?
Because it's forbidden.
Yeah, but she's doing it,
I have to raffo that one.
and it
They
works
might
so
be.
well.
They
Well,
might be,
she-
and we just don't see.
Yeah,
They're just not characters that are on the screen that we're seeing.
She should put on a veil. It's just too dangerous.
No one's as pretty as her.
I mean, like, it seems like it's very strongly discouraged, and she basically gets away with it because she is married to the leader of one faction and the sister to the leader of another.
Her brother's so interesting.
And the way that she does it is purely through echoing an older period of Japanese history, for the most part.
Yeah, they're taking the small shuffling steps and whatnot. Yeah.
And it seems like historical reenactment is a somewhat protected class of activities.
Yeah.
Oh.
Most of the time, the clothing that they wear is kind of shapeless, I get the sense.
It really depends. Like the Masons have suits, the Cousins have their wraps. The wraps are pretty shapeless.
The Utopia.
The
She wasn't wearing a kimono?
have their coats.
Yeah.
She was wearing an old style kimono. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It was specifically pointed out, okay, this is one designed for women as opposed to every other one that is worn, which is designed to be
Yes.
unisex and
Yes.
featureless.
It's suggested that the modern typical kimono is a unisex garment that is not really accentuating of any bodily attributes. It's kind of loose.
Yeah, it feels deliberately obfuscatory.
And even modern kimonos are basically like that. It's only through patterns and styles or like sleeve length.
Or like the way it's cinched, right?
Oh yeah, the obi is really, really important. Much more difficult in the women's.
This world really believes in the idea of clothing as communication, but has forbidden clothing from communicating gender. And that
Yeah.
is kind of hilarious.
Yes.
I think kind of going back to the Sun Gamer's question, like I kind of with the clothing point, and it makes me inclined to think, like agree with what Huron was saying, where Palmer just wants people to think about gender as a thing.
Mhm.
And there isn't a specific point that she's making other than
It's not didactic.
yeah, right. Like other than gender informs how
You treat a character.
yeah, like treat character and how society structures itself, and that investigating that is important in some way.
And it feels right now like you could come away with many different conclusions to these answers, and you would be able to find support in the text for many of them.
I think you can find support for many of them. One that I will strenuously object with is Mycroft's gendering of he for Suhyon Ansele Kosala, because the reason given
Yes.
is because Vivian is he, and therefore Vivian's successor must be he.
And as well for there's this little like love triangle going on in the Sneer Bosch, where it's like, okay, I'm going to refer to someone who is a woman as a he because I want you to think of them as powerful in relation to the other two males in here, or men here, or people I'm referring to as he.
Sniper is he, yeah.
Yeah, because of this, and it's like that betrays like a very that betrays a certain way of thinking about femininity. That's
very much does. Very much
Pretty
does.
problematic.
Yeah, you could probably call it problematic.
That reminds me, my Japanese history teacher in college. There have been female emperors in Japanese history. There are plenty, at least half a dozen. I mean, of course, most of them have been male, but they hold all the same power, which is to say, almost none. But he made a point to only refer to female emperors as female emperors instead of as empresses, because the empress, I think, in most contexts, would imply that they were just married to the emperor.
Yeah, there was the same point made in an ancient Egyptian history book that I read. There was two female kings who were referenced, and specifically not queens, because that was basically not a word used at the time. And I find it very interesting that when it comes to people in positions of power, Mycroft seems to have a very strong bias for referring to them as he.
And also, let's examine the gender of our 710 list members. Kosala is the only female on the top 7. That seems like it can't be coincidental.
Nope.
Mycroft considers himself male too, right? Or a man.
Very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why he's powerless under Danae's beauty.
Wiles.
It's like she like sighs once, and he's like, "I would have gone to war for her then." The sigh was so perfectly wistful.
Look, if sighs are your weapons, get good at them.
Wasn't there a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle who's really good at size?
I have no idea.
You're asking the wrong crowd.
So from this interesting non-sexed, sexist position, do we think that this world is better than our current one or worse? This is a question from Sun Gamer.
Wait, like from a perspective of gender or generally?
Generally.
Better.
Better?
Yeah. I think from like most objective perspectives, yeah, better. Like people don't need to work if they don't want to, basically.
20 hours is the new full work week.
Yeah, you're considered like a crazy workaholic if you do 40 hours.
It's Raphael. Raphael uses size.
Okay.
Editor Kip here. Good joke, Huron.
I think this world's better.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it seems dystopian, which I think is very intentional. But in terms of like the lives of everyday people and like the degree to which they can self-actualize, it seems pretty good.
I agree. The idea that you could have an allegiance with a government body by your own choice is just so great.
Yeah, that's the element I was also inclined to say better, and for kind of the reason Huron said, like people do seem to have a lot of agency, generally speaking, and less coercion.
And also, it's been hundreds of years since the last war, right?
Yep. And it seems like you can just grow your own fruit and meat at home.
You grow meat. How great is that?
You can basically print it, yeah.
Yeah.
No factory farming. That's pretty nice.
Well, we're not told that there's no factory farming, but yes.
Significantly reduced, at least.
I bet the humanists would be all for factory farming. The Black Laws too, probably.
This is out of context, but from an interview with the author, I have heard that certain protected methods of production are still in effect because of like EU laws. So like Parmesan is still being made in Parmesan ways.
So, all right, the U laws are all from utopians, or is that
The
like, what
EU
are the
laws.
Yeah,
I
Oh,
was saying
EU.
EU.
Okay.
Like you can't call it balsamic vinegar di Modena if it's not from Italy.
Okay.
So funny. I imagine that's mostly an EU thing, eh?
Yeah.
I find it very interesting that the utopians seem to control most of the wealth in the world, despite being such a small percentage of the population, because they've made a lot of patents. Is it?
Yeah.
Tiny patent-rich utopia.
Yeah. So I guess they have a culture that's very good at doing science and research. I'm very curious as to what they're doing that is cultivating that attitude so much, and why more people aren't associated with their faction. Is it not freely joinable?
Those questions will be answered.
Great.
Well, a lot of people seem to hate the utopians. They almost got raped.
Yeah, isolated example.
They got threatened with rape. We have no idea how successful that attempt might have been.
Good point.
We do
They
know
do
that,
have
like-
dripping cloth, which
Yeah.
is bad,
I love the cloaks.
and their visors.
But Mycroft, like an animal, leapt down and saved them.
Yeah, like he showed a side of himself that he had hinted at it before. Like I even highlighted this part.
Well, it was how he had his like hand on Carlisle's throat real fast.
Yeah, initially, yeah, that's true. If you see violence here, it is not Vivian's violence. Rather, I infect those around me with a shadow of my own.
Yeah. When we were talking about Mycroft's biases, I almost brought up that line as a bias that Mycroft excuses all violence around him as his fault.
Yeah, which betrays some thought patterns that he has that he's not directly writing down a lot of the time.
This makes me think then that he probably did do something violent. It was his crime, and that he's either through both some combination of his guilty conscience and like legal stuff in regards to the servicers does not want to talk about that stuff in his
I
narration.
think we can safely assume that I'll go Mycroft Canner on your ass is not a threat of insider trading.
Yeah, to me, it feels almost like he was like some kind of ideological terrorist against the current regime. To me, it seems like he has a real problem with how things are operating right now, and is in a lot of ways working to subvert what is going on. I wouldn't be surprised if he was actively undermining things on his own end.
Oh,
He's well connected enough, and all of his different connections to all of the world leaders seem to be, like as we talked about earlier, he has a lot of agent. He seems to, despite being an effective slave, have a lot of agency within all of those relationships with the world leaders. So, like, got a lot of influence.
And he's clearly comfortable playing all sides.
oh yeah, and clearly comfortable with lies of omission most of the
Yes.
time.
And he's not talking about his own motivations, really. He's like kind of dancing around them. Like maybe he was not able to write them down in this approved manuscript for fear of retribution or whatever.
Why do you think he was working on the sewer main and ignoring the calls to the censor's office?
Because he got too into his work, of course.
Storm?
He just didn't want to see that he. First of all, that is a bit of a leading question. Second of all, I think he, I think he probably knew he would have to eventually go see Vivian, but either didn't want to, wasn't ready to, or didn't have his excuse is not the right word, but like his story ready for how he wanted to handle the whole 710 list thing.
I think it was extremely telling that he brings up this doomsday scenario and then immediately discredits it. And it's like, yeah, don't worry about it. The ties between hives are really strong, much stronger than this guy had thought they were. So we can perhaps be a little bit more conservative with our estimations of what are going to happen, which to me feels like sabotage.
And then, in his like narratorial hindsight, he then later goes back to say like, what I didn't know at the time was blank.
Yeah, whatever, Mycroft. You're writing this for an audience.
Yeah. I'm going to be charitable to Mycroft And I'm going to say that he was doing this micro charity at the sewers in order to draw attention to the plight of servicers and to improve their general station. And he's one of the few people who has the ability to stand alongside them and demand better treatment by those in power.
You got them ice cream. Ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. Like children clamoring for McDonald's.
He's being a good ally. He's performing praxis.
And it's somewhat implied, I think, that a lot of the times people forget to feed their servicers.
Yeah.
That element's very interesting. That their sustenance is literally dependent on who they're fed by, like literally fed by their people they're serving.
And he clearly has friends with them, but he's not allowed to name them. They're like almost unpersoned.
They are, aren't they? And Mycroft also doesn't accept or doesn't eat the food prepared for him by Danae.
No. He says, I can just get food from this bush whenever I want, right? I don't.
From Bridger, he says. He says
Yeah.
Bridger can make filet mignon out of cardboard. Do you think I'm going to go hungry? And that's not an answer.
I'm sure that it's going to be talked about, but like I said, the Bridger thing, just how he's doing what he's doing, which is a big mystery. That's the one part of the story that's just not clicking for me in terms of, okay, it's the main thing that feels like magic, whereas everything else has some sort of at least pseudo scientific or technological explanation. That's the big one that doesn't.
Does it? Because the actual science in these books is never explained. You never say like, oh, it's like, these cars, they float on EM fields.
I think what Storm means is plausible.
Yeah, which I'm sure is obviously very intentional.
Large amounts of plausibility, low detail.
Yeah.
As far as the sets go, I mean, so they're controlling these cars in the sky. They're routing the cars through the sky. Humans can't consciously pay attention to more than 2 or 3 things at a time, right? You can't juggle that amount of data comfortably, right? Like we're not good at parallel processing.
But our neurons are.
Well, I say at least with this sets us the head explanation of they're basically from like a very young age, they're constantly plugged in, and over the course of years, they are physically changed to be able to do that over time.
So I think this will require like extensive genetic modification and like direct rewiring of the brain. But even so, like their sensory experiences has to be so different. Like they're doing so much parallel processing and seem to be conscious of all the parallel processing that, like, the extent to which you can call them human anymore, I think is so debatable.
They're basically mentats with like plugins.
Mentats seem to be able to not do the same level of parallelization that sets can do.
Agreed.
Like the mentats just seem really good at math. Is like what
mentats are nowhere near as skilled as sets. I do agree that the amount of reprogramming that you'd have to do in a human brain in order to get it to do the computation that is described in the books is extreme.
Yeah.
And that any remainder of humanness would be more likely a reconstruction of it than a natural development of it.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I would consider this science fantasy, and honestly, more fantasy than science.
Sure. Absolutely.
That's fair.
Okay.
We just have to accept that sets exist.
Yeah, and similar to the Bridger, I think I'm sure we will go more into that.
To me, it feels like Bridger is kind of directly hitting on a theme of, to what extent do our perceptions of reality create the reality itself? And to what extent are those fundamentally limited? Because those are, like, we're seeing those questions being played with here, like, with regards primarily to, like, the soldiers. It's like, okay, so he created them. They seem to have false memories of a war that had been fighting. Did he conceive of that war when he was doing that? Was that something in his mind? One of them is brought back from the dead.
Yeah, was it a war that was created in the creators of the soldiers' minds?
Yeah, right? And where are these coming from?
Is it ethical to bring somebody back from that kind of situation, even if they weren't alive in the first place?
Yeah, and like he remembers, it was just like a comforting, warm sleep. I don't remember the afterlife. And obviously, Bridger would not be able to do things like design. Like there's no way he would be able to understand how to cure the diseases that he's created cures for, right?
Yep.
So where is that knowledge coming from? is he accessing some kind of like platonic realm where he's drawing these ideas from and somehow manifesting them in reality? Who knows?
I think Bridger is an exploration of the metatextual, like what the role of an author is in these kind of stories and the realness to the reader of what they're reading.
I'd call that Mycroft.
And Mycroft can't create things that are just imaginary.
Mycroft creates the whole text of this book.
And Ada Palmer creates Mycroft's words.
Yep.
No, I see what you're saying. Where like, well, I think both of those can be true because what Bridger is doing could be just not what's happening with the soldiers, but that could also be Mycroft writing down. That could be just colored by Mycroft's narration, where Bridger is doing something and Mycroft is just telling us that he's doing something else.
I've heard some authors refer to their characters as creations which surprise them sometimes. Like living people who they just like kind of put on the page, they concretize down, but the characters exist in a world outside of themselves and they're surprised by what their characters do. I've always found that a fascinating conception of characters. It's not one that I think I could do, but
those tend to be very interesting characters, in my opinion. Bridger's abilities are not proven within the text, which I think is very interesting for Mycroft, who has started out the discussion of Bridger with. He says Carlyle was not permitted the luxury of unbelief, but it seems that whether or not Bridger was actually able to do these things is highly contested within the world that Mycroft is writing.
And what does that suggest?
So Bridger is probably dead, first of all, because otherwise you just point to him just like, hey, here it is, or maybe he went away or something. He's not available. And also, the things that he did were not seen by many people. He never gets to the stage where he's an adult and he's like coming out of the doors of the Vosh like some kind of messiah figure. It's like,
He's
okay,
doing his
I can
mastery.
I can manifest things, people. I can solve whatever problems you have.
Or at the very least, we're not seen in person by many people.
I wrote down a somewhat crackpot theory that maybe Bridger is Mycroft. That I don't have anything to back that up. Where like that was just kind of a fleeting thought that I was like, oh, Dr. Palmer's playing with the narrative and narration, and there's a lot of weird stuff going on with Bridger. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with Mycroft. Mycroft seems to have a lot of sway over who is like trustworthy to the Bash, and Bridger is the most important, or at least we're told Bridger is the most important part of the Bash. Again, probably not what's going on, but there's certainly something there.
There's like 3 people that know of Bridger, right?
I thought it was everyone in
If
the
we don't count
Bash.
toy soldiers.
Yeah.
Should we? Are they real?
Or this like weird doll that was made.
Thisbe, Mycroft, and Carlyle. Cato knows that Bridger exists, but doesn't think he's special.
Yeah.
He's just part of the science club that Cato runs for children.
Right.
And then there's this implausibly self-sacrificing mother doll. Mama doll.
Mama doll.
Right?
Yeah. And
Kinda
Boo,
creepy.
the dog.
Boo the dog. Oh, yeah. Okay. And there's a cat that we don't see.
Sad cat. But Sad Cat died, I think. Sad Cat's miracle ran out.
That's good.
Boo.
No, Boo's the dog.
Fair. And yeah, so Mycroft is able to have this level of influence, but Mycroft is not himself part of the Bash. Bosh.
Yeah, Bosches are forbidden to servicers.
Yeah.
No Bosch, no family, no possessions. They just gotta live in the dorms and get paid in food.
And it's like a lifelong thing, right?
It is a life sentence, yes.
Oof.
They must have done some bad stuff.
I was gonna say you must do really bad stuff to get.
A sentence imposed when your crime is considered too great for you to repay in your lifetime, which is an interesting definition of crime.
Also seems to be highly subjective. And concerning like subjective things like the gag orders, like gag genes, that's really interesting too, because the court just decides, okay, if the child knows about their own ancestry, it will destroy them. We're not going to ever show them their ancestry. But then they will know that something terrible, like they can just imagine whatever it might be that was so terrible that they can never know about it. What's worse?
And it's Romanova that would determine both the gag genes and create servicers. Is that like Romanova that just?
No, the servicer program is the cousins.
No, I was gonna say so like, but like someone has to say this person created a crime that's so bad that became a servicer. So is that like because Romanov is like the overarching?
The legal accountability for various crimes is something that is explored in this series. We haven't gotten there yet, but
Okay.
yes.
I can't imagine any scenario anywhere ever where like not telling somebody who their parents are would be so devastating.
I can think of situations where it would be devastating for the parent, maybe. Like, say,
Yeah.
if they were already in a fragile mental state.
Yeah, okay, I could see that. But like for the child, like
I
you tell
really
a kid
can't
at a
imagine
young
it, yeah.
age, like they're just gonna be like, okay, I accept it because that's what kids do.
It's assuming that there's fault on the child for
Yeah.
the situations of their birth.
Inherited sin.
And it's telling the child that no, this would destroy you. The very fact of your birth is such a deep, dark, dangerous secret that it must be hidden.
To me, it feels like a political contrivance, perhaps. Like, is Carlisle's birth like hidden because it's actually protecting Carlisle, or because it's more politically convenient for the knowledge of this for the Denai to be hidden, right?
I mean, it sure looks like the latter to me.
Yeah.
Is it lifelong? Like they're never allowed? I forget
They're
if
never
it's
allowed. Yeah.
never allowed. Okay, even okay.
And it also seems like it should be something that might be trivially easy to do, like just to do yourself. If you can get like an off the shelf genome assembler, which are honestly full genome sequencing is something that you could theoretically do at home with only a few $1,000s worth of equipment today.
Yeah. And it's deliberately pointed out here. Oh, we can just we have devices that you can buy for like a couple million that can literally split atoms. And then he goes on upon his digression, but like, oh, that means they can't really be atoms, right? Because you can split them. Like Mycroft, you
Right, yeah.
dummy.
Yeah. Hey, machines that can split atoms are actually very cheap. They're just called radiological substances.
I imagine these can split any arbitrary atom, but
So can a high energy neutron. It's fine.
yeah, very high energy neutron. Yeah, usually we have magnets for this or something. Oh, Martin Guildbreaker seems like he is being set up as like kind of a virtuous Javert from Les Mis. I highlighted Martin does not acknowledge Machiavelli when a wrong action will yield a good result. Even so small a wrong as breaking the taboo on translating another's highest language, he halts like a parent unwilling to admit to a child that its favorite toy is lost. It's not that he fears dirtying his hands, nor even that the wrong itself deters him. Rather, I think that he hates admitting that this world contains such shades of gray, which is like the actual thing that Javert kills himself over.
I should
Yeah.
read them as
Martin and Javert are clear parallels and contrasts. I'll say that.
I'm really curious as to where he goes. 'Cause obviously, he's nicer than Javert.
Any other parallels from Les Mis?
Like who's Jean Valjean? Maybe it's Mycroft.
Oh, hey, you got it.
yeah, because I know about Les Mis that
Our pardoned criminal.
the criminal who's like trying to make up for his life and trying to become better is taking care of a kid, right?
Yeah, we are meant to believe that Jean Valjean's crime was so virtuous that his imprisonment is the crime.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, we have Mycroft, who seems to be the opposite. He is not
Mhm.
imprisoned. He's on parole immediately, or
Mhm.
we don't know immediately, but he's just living on parole, making his way through the world, eating food.
Yeah.
What was his crime? Is he virtuous like Jean Valjean, or is he incredibly dirty like Javert thought he was?
Jean Valjean was imprisoned for stealing a loaf of bread for his starving sister and her
Yeah.
child, and
Yep.
the sentence was extended because he tried to run from the punishment.
Yep.
And then Javert comes up to him when he's released and he's like, okay, you're free, eh? But you have to carry this badge of shame that with you forever until you die. And Bridger is making this point, like this point, oh, Odysseus and Valjean, they both seem to be beloved of the gods, which means that everyone around them is going to die or suffer some terrible fate.
I would say that watching every book that enters this text, like Les Mis or the Odyssey, or so many of the utopian names.
Oh yes, he's also contrasted with Odysseus, right? Like Mycroft is both Valjean and Odysseus.
Is important. And I would ask my panelists, do they have a book they would like Ada Palmer to bring into Terra Ignota in the near future?
Ulysses?
Okay.
So I'm confident she will not bring it in. But it's so obvious that this book has been written by someone who's read the book The New Sun.
Okay.
She did write the foreword for the Tour Essentials printing of Book of the New Sun.
It is interesting. I'm assuming that almost every, particularly some of the names that are references to like Voltaire and such, to like historical people or fictional characters, are very intentional, and I think an interesting component so far.
This is not a book, but so she has brought up Caesar a lot, Julius specifically, and also Agrippa.
Mm-hmm.
She has brought up Alexander the Great. She has brought up the French Revolution. If she does not bring up Napoleon explicitly, that will be a very deliberate omission. But I'm betting she will bring up Napoleon. I'm betting that will be an important thing to happen.
I think given that we're 45%
Where's Genghis Khan?
into
She's a European historian.
Wow.
I think she's brought him up, no? Like his name has been mentioned.
I think so.
yeah.
Okay. I still don't remember.
Given that this is in dialogue with the Enlightenment and with the classical period, I would not be surprised if she focuses more on European figures than she does on others.
Also saying that Bosch is directed from some super special Japanese word for home. That's not actually
Well, Mycroft says it. How much are you trusting Mycroft? Come on, you should know better.
okay. That's an out any user writer can and should use.
The literal center of the world is Rome,
Sure.
which, like, that's someone who is primarily a European historian, right? It's justifiable. You can definitely make an argument for that, but
Okay.
They moved the equator?
the equator. I mean, the Earth is a sphere, so the center would be
The Earth is an oblate spheroid.
the political center of the world.
Is Rome or Romanova?
It's it's New Rome, yeah, Rome with some minor changes. Didn't they like almost reconstruct it perfectly?
Pretty much. Was there ever so wise an investment in propaganda? Is the question that Mycroft asks.
True, and I think it's worth noting that the traditional marble-clad Rome that we think of when we think of Rome was only after the fall of the Republic and when Augustus Caesar was in power that he started doing this. He said that he found a city of clay and brick and then he left it marble.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Marble's cool.
Marble's Italian. Right? Only one place in the world has marble.
Is that true?
No.
Oh. I'm not a geologist. I don't know these things. If you're telling me a rock comes from
If you
one
ask
place,
some Italians, it's true.
yeah.
They'll claim that other places with marble is not actually marble.
They're also the only place to make pizza.
Yeah. And Prosecco.
It's Parmesan.
And true olive oil. And then Greece goes to war with them over it. It's fine.
Yeah. It's funny that he's a Greek and seems to have something of a positive disposition towards the Masonic hive.
Yeah, it is a bit. So I think that concludes our discussion of the first half of Two Like the Lightning. It was over in a flash. Thank you for all of you joining me on this journey and reading this book and humoring me with your with your half knowledge of a half book. Thank you so
Questionable
much.
insights on this, yeah.
This has been an episode of Legendarium Green Team. You can find us on Discord. You can find us also on Twitter at Green Team Pod. Thank you, Horizon Brave, for getting us all started. And thank you, Craig, for lending us this corner of our media empire. Our intro and outro music is Galactic Damages by the Jingle Punks. Bye.
Bye.
I
I'm holding up a peace sign.